Good morning. Welcome to a beautiful day, August 27th, I think, Wednesday. Beautiful day in New York City, about 75 degrees in the shade at the Motor Parkway in Queens, walking through from Peck Park to through Cunningham Park. And we ended up at, we're going to end up back where we started at Alley Pond Park. So it's a distance of, I don't know, probably about 9 miles. And then we're going to walk to lunch from there. Walking with my mom ahead of me. I got that's my wife and her mom behind us. So my mom and I go faster, and we tend to walk and alternate walk and run. And then we'll hit a bench, we'll do our push-ups and dips and stuff while we wait for them to catch up, and then we'll run up ahead again. So this whole trek is going to take us about 3 hours, and the reward at the end is lunch in Bayside. So here's my. We're going to talk about what I've learned from 7 years of early retirement. I'm currently 50. I retired at 43. Every year I forget what it was, 42 or 43 that I retired, but I think it's 43 that I retired. So it's coming up on 7 years this October. This Halloween will be 7 years of retirement. And what I've learned from those 7 years is that if I had to do it all over, I should have gotten a part-time gig before I left. Because as you know, I left the job officially in January of 2019, but I had vacation time that I used up beforehand. So I actually left the job in October of 2018, and I sat home and literally just, didn't do much for about half a year. I mean, I thought I had enough hobbies, learning the piano, learning different languages on Duolingo, going on daily walks, especially walking with my mom at least once, twice a week, taking a walk with my wife several times a week, my daily workouts, our travel, but that, the travel was only, once every couple of months. So what do you do in between? Well, it drove me nuts sitting home, and more importantly, it drove my wife and kids nuts being home all the time with them. It was not good, and constant feeling. If you're the kind of person like me, I came to America at the age of 9, 1983, and spent all my time in my family restaurant from then on, practically 7 days a week up until the day I left for, college. And then post college, I got a job right away. In fact, I got into the police department before I graduated from Binghamton University. Thankfully, I had the AP credits, so my last semester, I had one class that met one time a week. So I was able to convince the professor, to do an extra couple of papers in exchange for not attending the last month and a half of class, because I started the police academy in April, April of 1997, and graduation was late May of 1997. So I skipped out on a whole nearly 2 months of my final semester because I had the AP credits, and I got the job. And then for a good part of my career, once I hit lieutenant, I was working practically three jobs. So I had my day job, I had a personal training job on the side, and then we picked up some properties, which is not passive income. Okay, it's not a passive income. It's not passive investing. It was nearly, well, I wouldn't say a half-time job. It was a quarter-time job, let's say. But still, that's 10, 15, potentially 20 hours a week, depending on, and especially if I had to move out, new tenants and stuff like that, and you go in there, you clean up, and you gotta paint everything. Those days, we were working 7 days a week, both my wife and I, trying to get the place ready for the new tenants. And of course, during the winter, you got to go down there and shovel the snow and stuff, make sure you don't get sued, etc. So if you're like me and you've, worked most of your life, 6, 7 days a week, it's tough to then suddenly retire and do nothing at home. Not nothing. You have your hobbies, but there was this constant nagging feeling that I needed to make money. I needed to earn money. I needed to work for money, even though, clearly I didn't need it because I retired. You retire because you don't need any more money. But just still this nagging feeling like, oh, I'm sitting here reading when I could be earning even more money. So, half a year later, I got a job working about 4 days a week, and transitioned to another couple of jobs. I was a boat captain for about 6 months after that, and I quit that job because, well, when you're a boat captain in the wintertime, on a little tiny safety boat, it's a little scary, you know, walking on a boat at 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to drop the boat out to the under the Throgs Neck Bridge. Potentially snow, slipping. You fall into the water, 5 o'clock in the morning, nobody around. Even though I had a life jacket on, it's pretty scary. So I quit after the warm months had gone over. I quit around November. I was like, I can't do this. It's not worth it. It was fun for about 6 months, being on the water by myself, being a captain of a boat by myself. And then I transitioned to another security gig, doing about 3-4 days a week, and slowly transitioned myself down to 1 to 2 days. And then 2 months ago, I got fired because the boss called me up at Friday night, 11:30. 11:30, even though I was only working once or twice a week, and that particular week I hadn't worked one single day. And now you calling me up at 11:30 p.m. to tell me I got to show up at 8:30 the next day, Saturday, in not my usual place in Long Island, but in Manhattan, and not to do my usual gig, which is just being a security guard, but to do a bodyguard position, which I don't do. That's a completely different job, much more dangerous, especially when you're around so many people in Manhattan. So I said, no, I only want to work in Long Island, and I'm actually not available tomorrow. I'm busy. I have plans. He said, okay, nice knowing you. And that was that. And you know what? It's been about a couple of months, and I haven't had that nagging feeling since. Haven't had that nagging. Maybe, I may come up. Maybe it may come up later on. I have no idea. But I think that's the way to do it. Just to transition yourself to a part-time job and slowly decrease the workload. And had I not gotten fired 2 months ago, I thought in my head, I probably could have continued my 1 to 2 day a week job, very easy gig, basically sitting in my car and reading, right? Because I'm sitting in front of a mansion, guarding the mansion. That's all you can do. You read, you play video games, you do push-ups and crunches on the back of my truck, on the tailgate. Had I continued that job, I think I would have been happy to do it until I was deciding about 60. But as is, since I got fired, I really haven't had that same nagging feeling to make any more money, to work to make money. I mean, obviously, my portfolio does, as well as the S&P 500 has done. And you know what that's done over the last, 7 years since I retired. So I certainly don't need any more money. But I haven't had this nagging feeling that I need to work to earn, another $20 an hour. But yeah, so the takeaway, I guess, is, if you're like me, yeah, it's quitting working cold turkey is probably not going to be ideal. So maybe set yourself up with a part-time gig and slowly ease yourself off of this working culture that you've had, for 2-3 decades. All right. This is Motor Parkway in Queens, walking through Cunningham Park right now on a beautiful 75-degree day in the shade, walking with my mom, and somewhere a quarter mile behind me is my wife and my mom-in-law. And this is what we love to do, to spend time with each other, encourage each other to exercise. And then the rainbow at the end is eating out, lunch. Be well.